Hi, I'm John Norman. Today we're going to talk about house fires, or as they are known, private dwellings. In the United States, most of the structural fires that occur are in private dwellings. In fact, more than 425,000 one- and two-family homes burn every year. Fires in private dwellings, or PDs, also represent the greatest threat to civilian life and are responsible for more than 70% of the civilian fire deaths annually. The majority of PD fires begin below the second story, since cooking equipment, water heaters, electrical panels, heaters, cigarette smoking, and other devices and activities most likely to start fires are found on the first floor or basement. Nearly 90% of civilian fire victims are found in bedrooms or in the paths leading from the bedrooms to the escape routes. Therefore, the firefighting scenario at a PD should be: secure the water supply, stretch charged hose lines into position to protect the bedroom exits, vent, enter, and search all areas, and of course, extinguish the fire. From a firefighting perspective, several defects in private dwelling design and construction are responsible for rapid fire extension, contributing to their deadly toll. The most serious of these construction defects is the presence of an open wooden stairway in multi-story homes. Building code restrictions make such an open wooden stairway almost unheard of in most other occupancies. This open stairway acts as a chimney, funneling fire and gases upward toward occupants and exposed areas above. Also, there are few code requirements for interior finishes in private dwellings, and flimsy sheets of wood paneling are often nailed right over wood studs to partition rooms. This creates a very fast, hot fire that spreads rapidly. The occupants themselves worsen the situation. People like open spaces, so although rooms in houses are relatively small, most times doors are left open, allowing fire exposure to more areas. The single most important fire attack strategy at a well-involved private dwelling is to first protect the stairway or occupants. So immediately get a mid-sized hand line, 1.5 inches, 1 3/4, or 2 inch, into the building at a location that will put it between the fire and the occupants. Do this in conjunction with the primary search if staffing allows. Remember that at a house fire, the emphasis must be on searching for and removing all occupants. Because PDs burn so readily and fire can spread extremely quickly, you don't have a lot of time, so your search must begin as soon as you arrive. One morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning, I had just gotten home from a night tour in Brooklyn, in my hometown now, and had actually just gone to bed because we had a tough night tour the night before. And the alarm went off for a house fire in this garden apartment complex not too far away. And at first I was just going to say, I'm too tired. Wasn't even going to go. But the way the alarm came over just told me that this is a job. This is going to be a good fire. So I said, I better go. All right. So I go, and I make the first due engine, actually. And as we pull up, there are 5 or 6 people standing around the door to this apartment. So I ask them, before we force this door, does anybody have the key? Is this anybody's apartment here? I got blank stares. Nobody said anything. And they're looking, and I said, well, who lives here? They says, well, an old lady lives here. Oh, okay. Where is she? Oh, she's in there. And I'm like, what do you mean she's in there? Yeah, she's in there. So now that puts us into a whole nother mode. My partner and I, now we know we've got to make a move here. Force the door, and the living room where the fire had started had flashed over already, but now we know we got to get past that, and we're able to get around it and get past it. We get to the back of the apartment, and we find the bedroom door. Now, if she's still in there, she has to be in a bedroom, and that was fortunate for the woman because she had closed the bedroom door. So even though the room in front, the main exit route had flashed over, we were able to get into that back bedroom, and the fire hadn't gotten to her yet. So we were able to get her out right out the back window, and she went to the hospital, but she survived pretty well. released pretty quickly. If we hadn't asked those questions about, who was in there and know where to start looking, to head right toward the bedroom, I don't know if she would have made it. If we had waited until the hand line had moved in and knocked the fire down, again, if we had just made a search kind of after the hose line advance, I don't know that she would have made it. I really, she was in tough shape as it was, an elderly woman, took a lot of smoke, but without that aggressive search begun immediately on arrival, I really don't know that she would have survived. While performing your size up en route to the scene, devise your basic firefighting strategy and think about how to accomplish the following. The primary search, where to place apparatus for best advantage. Plan for 2 hose lines on a fire floor, the initial attack line plus a backup. Plan for a line for the floor above the fire if in a multi-story home, and be ready to supply lines to cover exposures. The proper position for the first engine using an inline supply is just past the building, unless the fire condition requires you to put it somewhere else. Pulling just past the house leaves the front of the building clear for the ladder apparatus if you need an aerial device. Although aerials aren't usually needed at lower floor PD fires, leave the spot clear just in case. Plan on 3 attack lines with a flow of 400 to 600 gallons per minute. The first hose line must go to the seat of the fire via the interior and cut off any threat to the interior stairs or bedrooms. If the fire is confined to one room, it can easily be extinguished by a mid-sized hand line. However, since open doors inside will expose more area, it's always a good idea to stretch a second line to back up the first. This is in addition to any line you need to cover the floor above the fire and any lines you might need to cover exterior exposures. Most house fires don't require a third line, but those that do are big trouble. Plan in advance for 3 lines and hope you don't need the third one. When establishing your water supply, you must be prepared to supply at least 400 to 600 gallons per minute. You might need another 250 GPM to protect each nearby wood frame exposure, meaning 800 to 900 GPM in severe cases. The hose bed and the pumper hydrant system or other water supply arrangement must be able to quickly supply this flow for up to 30 minutes. The method I like best is to use an inline stretch of large diameter hose from the hydrant to the fire. This is by far the fastest method of applying water, since using pre-connected lines is made easier by having the apparatus near the front of the house. These lines can be stretched by 2 members and charged with water from the unit's booster tank as soon as the chauffeur gets out of the cab. With 1 inch and 3/4 line flowing 180 gallons per minute out of a 500-gallon booster tank, the chauffeur will have more than 2.5 minutes to get the supply line broken and tied into the truck intake before the booster tank runs out. 2.5 minutes of full flow firefighting is a long time in a house fire. Odds are the fire will be almost out long before the 500-gallon tank is empty. Nevertheless, you must be ready for the 1% of fires that don't go out with 500 gallons, or even with 2 lines operating simultaneously. You may need to consider a different hose line deployment strategy if the fire originates in a basement of a balloon frame home. Balloon frame construction was common in homes built in the late 1800s and early 1900s, especially in the East and Midwest. Balloon framing consists of long pieces of 2x4 studs rising from the foundation all the way up to the eaves without any fire stopping along the way. The second floor joists rest on a ledger board, a small 1x4-inch board that is notched into the upright 2x4s. This construction allows the fire that penetrates from the cellar into the upright space to travel quickly and without obstruction straight up to the attic. These homes were often built with wood lath and plaster walls, adding to the probability of extremely rapid fire extension. If you find a serious fire in an older home, suspect the possibility of balloon framing and take steps to cut off the upward spread of the fire. Get a team inside, on the floor above the fire, to find an outside wall that they believe is over the main body of fire. Have them tear off the baseboard molding and punch a hole through the lath and plaster near the floor. If they find a 2x4 lying flat along the floor, this is a plate, and balloon framing is not present in that area. Since additions made to the house using more modern construction methods could hide an adjoining balloon frame wall from the original construction, it's smart to check all the exterior walls in the area of the fire just to be sure. If you find fire traveling up a balloon frame wall, the race is on. Get a hose line to the top floor or the attic, as well as one to the first floor and in the cellar. Speed is of the essence. You need to commit lots of firefighters with hooks to start opening the first floor walls as well as the top floor ceiling if the attic isn't easily accessible. They should make a small, fast examination hole into each bay between the studs to find the fire. Where fire or high heat is found, quickly drive the hose stream upward. Don't bother to open bays directly over or under windows, since windows and doors act as fire stops. Once you've made holes in all the exposed bays, expand the wall openings where high heat or fire was found. Be sure to tell the team on the top floor or attic which bays have fire in them, or at least which walls to open first, to help speed their efforts to find the fire. Most fires in private dwellings do not require roof ventilation. Unless the fire is in the attic, doors and windows provide adequate openings for horizontal ventilation to vent the smoke and heat and allow fresh air in. There are several exceptions to this rule, however. One exception is a fire in the basement of a balloon frame home. In these cases, roof ventilation is justified due to the high probability of the fire spreading rapidly upward into the attic voids. Another notable exception to the ban on roof ventilation in lower floor fires is when the fire has vented out a window, ignited the exterior siding, and has extended up to the eaves. Combustible exterior siding, such as asphalt siding, can produce such tremendous volumes of fire that it is nicknamed gasoline siding. Although not commonly installed nowadays, many homes are still covered with it, or it has been covered over with newer but just as flammable vinyl siding. Fire that is spread to involve the exterior combustible siding will often bypass the floor above the fire and burn directly through the eaves into the attic. In these cases, you must darken the fire down on the outside of the home, from the outside initially, and make sure the stream sweeps the eaves. Although the first hose line should nearly always be placed inside to protect the stairway, if the involved building is in a densely crowded area with many neighboring homes that are also sheathed with combustible siding, the first line may have to operate initially as an exposure line. After the interior line has been placed, an additional line must be stretched through the attic to check extension into the structure. You may well need to vent the roof even if the fire started in the basement. Depending on staffing and how close the fire is to the front door, it may be best to hit the fire on the exterior siding and sweep the eaves as soon as the line has been charged, and then bring that line through the front door to put out the main body of fire inside. This is especially true if low manpower prevents you from rapidly positioning 3 lines and providing the necessary ventilation. A fast exterior hit can buy you time to get up to the attic before the fire does. Regardless of the fire situation, the highest priority at a private dwelling fire is to protect the stairway or the occupants. So the first hose line's position and the various truck duties shouldn't change much. As I mentioned before, in a house fire, the emphasis must be on searching for and removing all occupants, and you don't have much time. Primary search must begin as soon as personnel arrive. If no separate unit arrives to perform the search and other ladder functions, then a first unit to arrive must make certain these tasks are performed as part of their operation. When assigning search and attack tasks, remember the OSHA mandate to operate in teams of at least 2 inside the building. In another lesson, we've covered the principles of venting larger, flat roof structures. PDs are primarily constructed with peaked roofs, so in this lesson, we'll discuss how to vent peaked roofs. One of the most traumatic sights for homeowners is to see a firefighter chopping away at his or her roof. The resulting damage often appears unnecessary to the layperson, but often roof ventilation can be absolutely essential. Proper roof ventilation will limit fire damage by reducing the lateral spread of fire inside the home and allowing hot gases to escape and disperse. This action eases conditions inside the structure, which speeds the advance of the hose line and helps further efforts to put out the fire. Search, rescue, attack, ventilation, and overhaul are all helped when firefighters can enter and operate in better conditions. On the other hand, improper roof ventilation may delay vitally important operations in other areas and cause increased damage. Roof ventilation takes manpower, which in the early stages of the fire may be better committed to search and hose line operations. As I mentioned earlier, when the fire is on a lower floor and has not extended to the upper floors, roof ventilation in private dwellings is not done, except in special conditions. A kitchen fire on the first floor in a 2.5-story home probably won't require venting the roof. Venting the roof would take at least 2 members, and since the fire is far from the roof, nothing would be gained. It would be far faster to vent the kitchen windows, either with a straight stream from the hose line inside, or by a member with a tool inside who is also conducting a primary search, or by a single member on the outside, perhaps the apparatus driver after he has charged the attack line and the hydrant supply line. But if the fire has extended to the attic or cockloft, roof ventilation may be essential. Attics generally don't have many windows, and attic ventilation in PDs is woefully inadequate for fire conditions. Heavy fire in these upper areas prevents the hose line from advancing, and when water is applied, the resulting steam can burn members. Therefore, it's critical to recognize when the fire is in the attic or cockloft. If it is, the roof must be opened if it is safe to do so, even if you have to call more people to get the job done. Because the stability of the roof is being destroyed by the fire, cut early and make the proper openings. Venting a peaked roof can be difficult for several reasons. First, the pitch of many roofs make them dangerous to walk on, regardless of fire conditions. Add to this the fact that the area beneath the roof may be filled with fire or hot gases that are steadily threatening to destroy the roof, and you can see that this, like all firefighting efforts, requires a plan. Basic roof construction consists of a support system, the rafters or joists, which form the top structure and support the roof's weight. Nailed to the joists is the sheathing or decking, which supports the weight of any people or objects on the top of the roof. Atop the sheathing is a waterproofing material, like tar paper. And finally, on top of the tar paper are the shingles, anything from wood to asphalt to tile or slate. Because peaked roofs are designed to shed snow better than flat roofs, smaller roof rafters are used. 2x6-inch lumber at 16 to 24 inches on center is common, and in older homes, you'll sometimes find 2x4s used. More modern construction might use lighter weight 2x4 with gusset plate trusses. None of these will carry as great a live load as a flat roof, so use extreme caution. Older homes used 1x2-inch furring strips nailed to the rafters at 6 inches on center in place of solid sheathing, which serves as fasteners for the shingles. This type of roof is very easy to cut and step through. If the roof is weakened by fire, extreme care must be taken to avoid putting any weight on it. At one fire with this type of roof construction, my brother Joseph fell through the roof, up to his armpits. He was saved from becoming a casualty by his protective clothing and a fellow firefighter who was able to haul him free from the hole. When in doubt, perform roof ventilation work from a roof ladder or out of a platform basket. The next era of roof construction used 1x6-inch tongue-and-groove boards for sheathing instead of furring strips. Since there was always wood under the shingle, roofers could be less precise when nailing the shingles. This type of construction offers a little more support for a firefighter, but it requires more work to open. The latest method of roof sheathing is to use solid sheets of plywood or particle board for the surface. Stability is about the same as for tongue-and-groove roofs, but it is much harder to open, since plywood is difficult to chop with an axe, and there are many more nails holding it to the rafters. A moisture barrier, or tar paper, is attached to the sheathing and then covered with roofing shingles, which can be of various materials. Older wood shingles are easily cut. but they pose great danger of fire spread. Many building codes across the country now reflect the fire potential of wood shingles, and they have been replaced in newer construction with asphalt shingles or some other slow-burning material. Like wood, asphalt shingles are easy to cut through, and you can often cut through the shingles and the sheathing in one step. Slate and tile roofs are much harder to vent. The best approach to venting a roof with slate or tile shingles is to remove the hard shingle before cutting into the roof decking. Slate can be scraped off using a shovel or the blade of an axe on the flat. Tile shingles can be pried off with a pointed tool. Both slate and tile shingles can be broken loose by striking them with a blunt object. Be especially careful when removing these materials. Slate and tile shingles produce heavy, sharp-edged debris that can hurt people below. Regardless of the type of roof covering, remember to operate safely. Roofs are designed to keep water out, not to support a fire attack. When you need to ventilate a peaked roof, the fire officer must take quick action to see that it is done properly. Power saws are preferred over axes to make the cut, but the principles of making a roof opening with either tool vary only slightly. Put safety first. Roof stability will determine your approach by roof ladder, platform basket, or aerial ladder. In any situation, if the roof is badly damaged or its structural integrity is in question, don't risk putting a man on it. The fire could blow through any minute, or worse yet, the firefighter could fall through into the fire. All members performing roof ventilation, regardless of how they will accomplish the task, and even if from a basket, should be in full protective clothing. Their bunker gear should be completely closed, and they should be wearing SCBA. Fire could suddenly erupt from a vent hole and engulf nearby members. Once you've determined how you'll vent, assign members and appropriate tools for the job. On flat or low-pitched roofs of up to 15 to 20 degrees, a power saw may be used to make the cut. On roofs with higher pitches, circular and chainsaws can be extremely dangerous. A sudden kickback could throw you off balance or even off the roof. On high-pitched roofs, if you can't operate the saw from a basket or a platform, use an axe. Once the cut is made, other tools are required to pull the roof boards up and open the hole. In fact, always bring a pickhead axe to a peaked roof in case the power saw fails to start. The pick end can be used for prying up roof boards, shingles, and the like. Other tools can be useful or necessary. Lights, rope, and Halligans, to name a few. Even if you have the manpower, don't send too many people to the roof. They can overload it and get in each other's way. The goal of venting a roof is to allow heat, smoke, gases, and fire to escape, and to minimize the spread of fire inside the building by drawing it up and out through the roof. So when you're venting a roof, you want to cut as close to over the seat of the fire as is safely possible. It's usually easier to tell where to cut on a peaked roof than it is on a flat roof structure. The private dwelling roof is proportionately smaller, so you can't be that far off. Size up the building as you make your way to the roof. Fire showing out of openings is a good indication, as are hot spots revealed by bubbling tar, steam on a rainy night, or melting snow. Because heat rises, make your cut as close to the peak of the roof as possible to release the greatest amount of hot gases. Cutting a long, wide strip along the peak of a roof will vent a large number of bays. In most cases, the wind decides which side of the peak you should make the hole on. Make the hole on the downwind side of the peak to help gases escape and blow away. If you make the hole on the upwind side of the peak, fire and heat might blow back toward the attack team. Arrange the sequence of cuts to keep the wind at your back, so released heat is blowing away from you. Solar heating panels can be a problem when attempting to vent the roof. If the panels are located directly over the best site for ventilation, you may have to decide whether to move the hole farther away from the seat of the fire or to cut it on the other side of the peak. If a strong breeze is blowing on the other side of the peak, you'll have to make the hole farther away, even if it means you might pull the fire. Skylights in homes have become more popular, and they often offer an aid to our firefighting efforts. In some cases, they may have already melted and simplified your venting problem. If you must vent them manually, make sure they're located on the downwind side so that opening them will have the desired effect. The tool may be prone to bounce off a plastic skylight, so it may be safer to pry the entire unit loose. There are several ways to cut a roof, depending on the situation. You'll need to decide which works most safely and effectively for the various conditions and type of roofs you encounter. A 4-foot by 4-foot hole is standard. This creates a big piece of roof to pull up after the cut is made, but it provides 16 square feet of vent. When working under poor conditions, limited manpower, working off a roof ladder or platform, or straddling the peak, making a 4-foot by 4-foot cut can be daunting. Under these conditions, the quick cut method works well and has a big advantage over the 4x4 hole because it spans only one rafter at a time. This cut allows the roof covering to hinge on the rafter by pushing down on one side of the cut material and pulling up on the other. Making a single 2.5-foot by 4-foot quick cut provides 10 square feet of vent. The quick cut is especially effective on plywood sheathing, since you don't have to pull up the 14 to 16 nails that hold the plywood to the rafters if you had made the standard 4x4 hole. Another cut, often possible from the basket of an elevated platform, involves cutting a triangular opening. This cut is not the most effective since it covers several rafters and provides only 3 square feet of vent, depending on the length of your first cut. But the member never has to set foot on the roof with this method, and the size of the cut is limited only by his reach and the ability to position the basket. Regardless of the type of cut to be made, always follow these basic rules when venting a roof. Ensure the stability of the area before entering. If you suspect the roof is weakened by fire, don't put a man on it. Always have 2 means of escape. If heat suddenly erupts from the roof, have somewhere to get away from it. Plan the cut and inform fellow members of its layout. Plan cuts to keep the wind at your back. Cut adjacent to the rafters for maximum support and the least bounce. Never step on the cut. And perhaps most importantly, never cut the roof supports. Most fires in the U.S. are in private dwellings, and an overwhelming majority of civilian fire deaths that occur annually occur in house fires. The basic fire attack strategy in a private dwelling fire is to first protect the occupants, usually the stairway or bedroom areas. Experience tells us that most victims are found in bedrooms, so when you arrive at the PD fire, be prepared to do the following. Get a hose line in place to protect the bedroom exits and conduct the primary search. Plan for one attack line on the fire floor with a second line ready as a backup. Plan for a line for the floor above the fire in multi-story homes, and be ready to supply lines to cover exposures as needed. Know what actions to take if you find fire traveling up balloon frame bays or if the exterior siding of the building is involved. Know when, where, and how you need to ventilate the roof. An average house fire, where no major involvement of basements, cellars, attics, or cocklofts has occurred, can normally be handled by 6 to 10 well-trained members who are there to work. That number does not include the rapid intervention team. That's not to say that any fire is simple or should ever be approached with a cavalier attitude. If the fire started in or extends to such problem areas like basements or attics, or if people are trapped, conditions deteriorate, or firefighters are injured, call for help. As always, have a plan and be ready to carry out the SOP, but remember, standard operating procedures only apply to standard fires. If conditions are not standard, let circumstances dictate procedures. I'm John Norman. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.